Hey, I brought cyanide for you. Are you crazy? Ingesting cyanide will kill you instantly.
How do you know that?
It's a widely accepted fact.
I remember learning it from my teacher in elementary school.
But what if your teacher had incorrect information or lied to you? That's ridiculous. There's no reason for my teacher to lie to me. He probably got that information from a book.
But sometimes people lie for no reason, and books can contain false information too, right? If we go down that path, we'll never be certain of anything.
We'd end up doubting even the most basic facts.
Exactly. So the fact that cyanide kills is something we can never truly know unless we take it ourselves. We assume that what we know is true. But what if the things we believe in are based on incomplete information, misinformation, or manipulation? This is a question that René Descartes tried to answer. Descartes argued that we must doubt everything until we find something that is absolutely certain. His famous statement, "I think, therefore I am," was his way of proving that the only truth he could be sure of was his own existence as a thinking being. Everything else, his senses, his knowledge, even the world around him, could be an illusion. Descartes was skeptical of the reliability of our senses. He believed that our perceptions could be deceiving. Think about optical illusions. Two lines of equal length might appear different because of their surroundings. A sound may seem louder in a quiet room than in a noisy one. If our senses can be tricked so easily, how can we be sure that anything we perceive is truly accurate? This skepticism leads to a crucial dilemma. If we doubt everything, how do we function in daily life? If we refuse to believe anything until we verify it ourselves, we would never get anything done.
Society functions because we trust knowledge, in science, in experts, in historical records.
But what if that trust is misplaced? History is filled with widely accepted truths that were later proven false. People once believed that the sun revolved around the earth. Doctors used to think that bloodletting cured diseases. In the 19th century, it was common practice for surgeons to operate without washing their hands, until Ignaz Semmelweis discovered that hand washing significantly reduced deaths from infections. At the time, doctors refused to believe him. If something as basic as hand hygiene was once controversial, how many truths today could also be wrong? Immanuel Kant approached the question of truth differently. He argued that even if an objective truth exists, humans cannot fully perceive it. According to Kant, everything we experience is filtered through our minds. We don't see reality as it truly is, we see our interpretation of it. Kant distinguished between phenomena and noumena. Phenomena are the world as we perceive it, while noumena are the world as it truly exists. But we can never experience noumena directly. Our senses, emotions, and cognitive limitations prevent us from accessing pure, objective truth. This concept is easy to understand with an example. Color perception. Is the sky really blue? It appears blue to humans, but for a colorblind person, it may look different. For a bee, which sees in ultraviolet, the sky may appear in a way we cannot even imagine. So what is the true color of the sky? If truth is dependent on perception, is there even such a thing as an absolute truth? Friedrich Nietzsche had an even more radical view. He argued that truth is not absolute. It is a construct created by those in power. He believed that people don't seek truth for its own sake, but rather to serve their own interests. One of the best examples of this is the misinformation spread by tobacco companies. In the 20th century, they funded research that falsely claimed smoking had health benefits. Doctors appeared in advertisements recommending cigarettes. The companies manipulated science to convince the public that smoking was safe. This shows how easily truth can be fabricated and controlled. A more recent example is fake news on social media. Studies show that false information spreads faster than real facts. This makes it easy for people to accept misleading narratives. If truths can be manufactured, how can we trust any information? Even if we assume that objective truth exists, our own psychology can distort it. One major factor is confirmation bias, the tendency to accept information that supports our beliefs while rejecting anything that contradicts them. A study by Richard S. Nelson and Richard E. Ross found that people interpreted the same data differently based on their pre-existing opinions. If truth is filtered through personal bias, can we ever truly be objective? Leon Festinger's cognitive dissonance theory provides another explanation. When people encounter facts that contradict their beliefs, they experience psychological discomfort. To reduce this discomfort, they either reject the evidence or twist it to fit their worldview. A clear example of this is the Flat Earth movement. Despite overwhelming scientific evidence that the Earth is round, some people refuse to believe it. No amount of proof will convince them because accepting the truth would mean admitting they were wrong, something that many people struggle with. Another experiment, known as the invisible gorilla experiment, shows how our perception is limited. In this experiment, Participants were asked to watch a video and count how many times a basketball was passed. In the middle of the video, a person in a gorilla suit walked through the scene. Half of the participants never noticed it. This proves that we often don't see what we aren't expecting to see. If we can miss something as obvious as a person in a gorilla suit, how many important truths are we missing in daily life? If truth can be manipulated, perception is flawed, and our psychology distorts reality, how can we ever be sure of anything? One possible solution is to adopt a scientific mindset, to always be open to new evidence, question our biases, and accept that truth is constantly evolving. But even science is not free from bias. Financial interests, politics, and human error can all influence scientific findings. That's why peer review, independent verification, and skepticism are necessary. Even in science, truth is never final, it is always being refined. So, should we follow Descartes' radical skepticism and doubt everything? Should we accept Kant's idea that truth is always shaped by our perception? Or should we agree with Nietzsche, who claimed that truth is often just a tool for power? If truth is influenced by perception, power, and psychology, then what are the real-world consequences of misunderstanding or manipulating truth? One example is the replication crisis in psychology and medicine. In recent years, researchers have discovered that many famous psychological experiments could not be replicated, meaning their results were not as reliable as originally thought. Some studies that were widely accepted as truth have turned out to be flawed. This raises an important question: how much of what we consider scientific fact today might be incorrect? Another case of distorted truth is mass hysteria and misinformation. Throughout history, societies have fallen into collective delusions where false information led to widespread panic. One example is the Salem witch trials, where people were accused of witchcraft based on superstition and fear rather than evidence. People were executed not because they were guilty, but because the truth at the time was shaped by fear and paranoia. A more modern example is the anti-vaccine movement. Despite overwhelming scientific evidence supporting vaccines, misinformation has led some people to believe that vaccines are harmful. The result? A resurgence of diseases that were previously under control, like measles and polio. When false information spreads, it doesn't just change opinions, it can have life or death consequences. Truth is also manipulated in advertising and media. Companies use psychological tricks to make their products seem more effective than they really are. 95% of dentists recommend this toothpaste. But were the dentists given real alternatives? Scientifically proven. But was the study funded by the company selling the product? These tactics make people believe something is true without critically analyzing the evidence. Governments have also played a role in shaping truth. Propaganda and censorship have been used for centuries to control public perception. During World War II, propaganda was used to manipulate citizens into supporting the war. In some countries today, access to information is still restricted, meaning people only see what their leaders want them to see. With the rise of AI-generated content and deepfakes, the future of truth is even more uncertain. AI can now generate realistic videos, voices, and news articles that are completely fake. Imagine seeing a video of a world leader saying something controversial. How do you know it's real? As technology advances, distinguishing truth from fiction will become even more challenging. Given these challenges, how should we approach truth? Should we accept that truth is always uncertain? Or should we work harder to refine and verify our understanding? One approach is to adopt critical thinking and epistemic humility. The idea that we should always be open to new evidence and willing to change our minds when presented with better information. This means questioning sources. Who is providing this information and what is their motive? Looking for multiple perspectives. If only one side of a story is being told, is it the full picture? Being comfortable with uncertainty. Not all questions have easy answers, and that's okay. However, this approach takes effort. Many people prefer simple, absolute truths over complex, evolving ones. But if history has shown us anything, it's that truth is rarely simple. So where do we stand? Should we follow Descartes' radical skepticism, doubting everything until absolute certainty is reached? Should we agree with Kant, accepting that truth is always filtered through human perception? Or should we align with Nietzsche, recognizing that truth is often a construct designed to serve those in power? Ultimately, truth is not just about facts, it's about how we interpret, accept, and question them. This leads us to a final question. If the truth is always changing, should we ever be certain of anything? How do you think?